Brian Tilton has to put it up for the buzzer. Banks it in! He banks in the third!
A timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot!
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Scotty Talks Sixers. As you know, we are right here on DSM Media. Make sure you subscribe to DSM Media. Help us grow here on YouTube. Be sure to comment. Get yourself involved in the show. We love to get the audience involved here. As you can see, I'm with a very special guest here, my man Sean Barnard. You guys may know Sean. He's a Sixers staff writer for Heavy on Sports. He's an Eagles contributor for Yard Barker and founder of Pick Swap Media. I know I've got to work with you guys quite a few times over there. But Sean, welcome to the show, my man. I'm happy to have you once again.
Yeah, appreciate you having me back on, Scotty. Always good talking up. Kind of hitting that first checkpoint of the NBA season where we're starting to see some things. The pack's starting to separate a little bit. We're seeing where the Sixers lie, so I'm excited to get fully into it.
Absolutely. And you're a busy man, so I do appreciate your time. As you guys can see, he's getting a lot of work out there. So I appreciate you fitting me in, Sean. But nonetheless, guys, like I said, if you're not already subscribed to DSM Media, hit that subscribe button, turn the notifications on so you're notified every single time that we go live. And of course, make sure to follow DSM Media on all social media platforms. With that being said, let's get right into it, Sean. We got a busy Thursday midday here. So we had a little bit of action last night, obviously going on in Cleveland. Our Philadelphia 76ers headed over to Cleveland, take on the Cavs, ended up coming out of that with a 113-85 loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers. There's a few things you can point to in this game that kind of stick out. I mean, the Tobias Harris 3 points, 0 for 7 from the field. The Sixers just didn't shoot the ball well, right? The Cavs were completely on fire. What was your takeaway from last night? Are you putting any weight into that as far as an outlook for the Sixers against a potential Eastern Conference finalist there when you're looking at these Cleveland Cavaliers? There's no Jared Allen there last night, no Kevin Love. Does it worry you at all, or is this just kind of a throwaway game? You just kind of forget about this?
Yeah, to give the short answer, it's a pretty much a throwaway for me. Not a lot to take from that. I mean, the Cavs just shot the absolute life out of the ball. They finished the game shooting 60.8% from the field, 51.7% from three. There was a stretch in the third quarter. They had one of the historically great second quarter shooting performances, and in the third, they were shooting 70% from the field and 80% from three. And there's just not a lot you can do when that's the case. And while the Sixers certainly did not play their best, they looked pretty sluggish at times, just a little slow out there. Energy wasn't there. There's just not a lot you can do to overcome that. So for me, it's kind of a burn the tapes, move on. Doc Rivers called it a schedule loss following the game. I wouldn't go as far as that, but definitely not one that I'm super panicked about. And I guess my biggest takeaway of it is the little whispers of the Sixers are better shorthanded and don't need the stars. It's no, when we're facing these top-end teams that are actually good and looking to contend, there's a reason that we need James Harden. There's a reason that we need Tyrese Maxey. So it is good the reinforcements are on their way.
I like that. I like the first part where he said burn the tapes. Yes, get rid of that because we don't need to see any of that again. And yeah, I agree with that last part as well. Just kind of the talent separation, right? Especially when you're going against two guards like Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, who can just light you up. Both of them can light you up for 50 at any moment. So when you're going against guards of that caliber, you need your top guards out there, right? D'Anthony Melton and Shake, they've kind of held us afloat for the time being. They haven't gone against a backcourt like that. So, yeah, looking at the Cleveland Cavaliers, it was an impressive outing from them because Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland they didn't come out and destroy the Sixers. They weren't absolutely on fire. I mean, Donovan Mitchell did shoot 5 for 7 from the three-point line, but it was more timely than them actually, taking over the game in an absolute form. But their whole team was just making plays. Evan Mobley was impressive. It did look like pure exhaustion out there last night. And, looking at D'Anthony Melton, his shooting numbers have been kind of going downhill the last few games. What are some good takeaways from this injury plague? I know you said it's a reminder about you needing your stars, but what are some of the positives that you can take from this little spurt where we haven't seen Maxey, we haven't seen Harden, didn't see Embiid for a little while?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of positive takeaways. The buy-in defensively. The defensive numbers have gone off the charts this month. Sixers have the best defensive rating for the month of November. I haven't checked after last night's game how much things have affected that, because I would assume the numbers dipped quite a little bit, so they might have slid down a couple spots. But in general, just buying in on the defensive end, we're seeing and looking back at the start of the season, one of kind of the frustrations from me and a lot of people, I think, was the talk this offseason was like the added depth and like these new pieces, these two-way depth pieces, and to run such a short rotation to start the year, we really don't know what these guys are capable. So you're seeing like different versions of these players when they're not constantly looking over their shoulder or afraid to get kind of yanked out of the game after one mistake. And guys like Paul Reed, Shake Milton, D'Anthony Melton, all these guys, I think Furkan Korkmaz just benefited from like that kind of safety and time. And we saw what they really can do. And I don't think that should be fully abandoned when things come back too. And like, obviously their minutes are going to get scaled back, but these guys deserve chances. They're in the NBA for a reason, and they did some good things for the team.
I like what you said there, and it seems like you're kind of going in a specific direction there. Didn't say anything about Doc specifically, but thinking about Doc Rivers and how he kind of has been forced to use these players now, forced to put Shake in a starting role and give him starter minutes. How much does that worry you when guys like Embiid, obviously he's back, the offense is already kind of shifted into not as much flow, not as much fluidity. When Harden gets back, how do you keep guys involved? How worried are you about Doc Rivers and him implementing a system where he does keep those guys involved?
Yeah, so I'll say my expectations are, I think it's going to come right back to how it was before the injuries. I think he's going to play these starters a ton. That's kind of what I'm braced for and expecting. My take on it is like, obviously you want your stars and your best players to play the most minutes, but Tyrese Maxey and James Harden are each in the top 14 in the NBA in minutes per game. Before Maxey's injury, he was first in the NBA in total minutes played, which is like, there's just no need for that amount of strain to put on these guys early in the season. So there's no reason why you can't like scale that back, like literally like 2 to 4 minutes a game, and give other guys a little bit of run and see what Shake Milton can do with that kind of opportunity or something, because this is still the stage of the season where you should be trying to get more creative, play around, see what works, what doesn't, what lineups look good, what guys can play together and who can't. It's come playoff time where those decisions should be made. And we're also like, to swing it back to last year, take a guy like Paul Reed, who looked incredibly raw in the playoffs, a guy that people have been pounding their table for minutes. He definitely wasn't fully ready for the postseason. You showed why he deserved flashes, but had it been the case where it took a whole season where he was developing, working on these things, and I definitely see him getting better at all of these issues we talked about so far this season, it could have been a completely different result and even better in the playoffs. So the mindset should be like growing, trying things, and preparing for the postseason when you actually do have to cut down on the rotations.
Yeah, no, I love everything you said there. And it kind of takes me to my next question for you. Who specifically has impressed you enough during this time that you feel they definitely should remain in the rotation permanently? Obviously, George Niang's been in the rotation, so maybe we don't need to talk about him, but guys like Shake, maybe D'Anthony Melton scaled up minutes. Paul Reed, you mentioned him, and kind of maybe the difference you've seen between what Paul Reed presents and what Montrezl Harrell presents, because obviously they seem to be polar opposites in what they do, even though they're both energy guys. So I'm interested to see what you think of those two, if you think Paul Reed should get that nod going forward the rest of the season.
Yeah, so I'll start with Shake Milton's been the guy that's kind of exceeded my expectations by the most. It's been an interesting kind of just career arc for Shake. Like a second round guy, did his time in the G League, worked his way, and then kind of just was a flash on the pan, jumped off the page when he got his kind of first opportunities with the Sixers. Right. He had that 39-point performance against the Clippers, against Doc Rivers as a coach there. So then Doc was loving him when he came here. The opening quotes on his presser about Shake, about how the NBA has not caught up to Shake Milton yet, and then seeing him in that six-man role, and then really just kind of fading off. And then in fairness to like any decision making and everything, like we're seeing Shake play the best basketball that we've seen him play in years at this point. And what specifically has jumped off to me about why I'm like firm on making sure he gets minutes is there's developments in the other areas of his game. Like he's always been a guy who can come in and create his own shot. He's now playmaking for others. He's phenomenal at that pocket pass to Embiid. He uses his like 7-foot wingspan to just kind of wrap it around defenders and create that, which is huge. He's rebounding well, and he's got like he's playing his size again. Like one of the intriguing things about him was like he stands like 6'5", but he's got a 7-foot wingspan. So there was always like theoretically he can guard bigger guys, take on more responsibility. And I'm kind of seeing him use that more, particularly like around the basket. The way he's like attacking and using his length to finish and going at people, that has never kind of been the case with him. So that's particularly exciting for me. And it's filling a need that this Sixers team needs, because we've talked about how they've been like starved a little bit for ball handling and playmaking outside of James Harden, Tyrese Maxey. Shake Milton is doing these things, so let's continue giving him the chance to. And he's impressed me a ton. And also, as far as the Paul Reed Montrez thing, I'm very disappointed by the Montrez Harrell experience so far this year. I've been a Montrez guy in the past, but it's just really not there. He's always been a guy that's been a defensive liability, never been good there. And it's kind of like the theory is that he can make up with that with his offense, because in the past, he has been very good offensively. He's been an 18-point per game scorer. He's been a sixth man of the year. It hasn't been that way this year. The shot doesn't look good. The creation doesn't look good. It's a lot of ugly basketball when Montrez isn't playing well. And in contrast to that, like Paul Reed is a guy who we're seeing the progression happen. Like he's cutting kind of the nonsense out of his game. The fouls have been scaled back some. And he's just like so locked in and keyed in on the ball for every single second he's in the game, which I just absolutely love watching. Like he's just going to leave it all out there. And he's just been good. Like, he's adding little things. He's better as a screener. So I'm super intrigued, super happy, and just proud of him for the development that's coming.
Yeah.
I hope that continues.
I love the last part about Paul Reed there, because he has, and that was like the biggest annoyance with Paul Reed was you come in and it's just a couple dumb fouls, and you'll still see it from time to time, but he has cut it back tremendously. And he's leaving all of it out on the court, like you said. He's given all of his maximum energy. And on a team like the Sixers, where sometimes you have to question if some of these guys are playing that hard, you can always tell that Paul Reed. That's why I appreciate Tyrese Maxey, right? Because he's always going full speed. He's always going at it 110%. And same thing with Paul Reed there. With Shake Milton, he's so interesting because he's always had like a tool bag, right? Like he's always had a nice skill set, like you said, to get his own shot. Especially in that mid-range. Do you think kind of watching Harden has had any type of effect on Shake and maybe even his approach? Because I know exactly what you mean. He's been approaching like triple doubles while Harden's been out, and he's been getting these minutes. Harden and Maxey have been out, but do you think that any of that has kind of translated? Is that just all Shake kind of figuring it out? What type of influence has Harden had on this guard unit? As a whole, as it seems like all of these guys have gotten better since he's gotten here. Now, D'Anthony Melton's an add-on, but the other two have been here nonetheless.
Yeah, and Shake brought this up himself at a pretty recent press conference last week, saying like that he's learned a lot just watching James, how he goes about things, operates the game. I definitely think that plays a role. I also think a lot of it is Shake just kind of growing into himself. Like he's now 26 years old. He's not like the kind of young and up and coming guy. He's starting to kind of find his lane as a basketball player, which is great. And it is just like the passing ability specifically is what I'm most impressed by as far as a development. So to see that adding, like if he can be a guy that's more than just a microwave scorer, like if he can continue to be like a spot up shooter, a capable secondary playmaker, that's key for both him and the Sixers as far as long term.
That's huge, yeah. And you have to wonder if maybe bringing D'Anthony Melton into the mix, maybe that kind of has pushed Shake even further. Like, I got to really get my stuff together, get my game right. Because D'Anthony Melton's another young guard, right? He's younger than Shake at this point. Let me ask you this about those two guards. One, has Shake outperformed D'Anthony Melton during this span? And two, would you lean to Shake before D'Anthony Melton, or would D'Anthony Melton still be the first guy off the bench before Shake, I guess you would say, as far as guards?
Yeah, I mean, I think they play slightly different roles. I think long term, Melton more of an off-ball guy. He's capable as like a ball handler and a little bit as a creator. I think his best usage as a creator is when he kind of tucks into like a Bruce Brown type role, where he kind of does get it at the top of the free throw line and can secondary play make off that or get his own shot. I don't necessarily see him as like a run the offense, call the plays kind of guard, which I'm starting to see with Shake. So I guess if I'm looking at like the staggered minutes, I more see as like Shake as a backup to Harden and Melton as a backup to Maxey. But this is something that I think like I want to see this specifically, how this guard unit can work and flourish, that I want to see experimented with. Like I would like to see some 3-guard lineups of get Melton on the court with 2 of these guys, or see maybe. And I also like how Melton and Milton, the Eminem backcourt is what I've been calling it, but I like how that functions together too. So give them a little run if you want to do some second unit. Maybe if you're kind of staggering throughout a game, you run those 2, Embiid and 2 other guys on the court, and then it's Maxey and Harden with some other bench guys. I think that's a good way to kind of stagger things. So a lot of it, I think, is to be determined how it plays out over the next thing. But I do just want to see, like, let's play around with it. Let's experiment and see what works and what doesn't.
Do you expect Harden to adjust at all coming back? Like, well, I guess a good place to start with that question, what do you expect from Harden coming back? Are they going to work him in slowly, starting in Houston, or is this just going to be him fully back, maybe 30-plus minutes? Like, hopefully not, right, against the Houston Rockets on the road, but maybe, 20, 25-plus minutes for Harden getting right back into the game, or is this going to be kind of work him back into the rotation, make sure he's right before you send him on a full go?
Yeah, I think he'll get a pretty expanded role, probably not full minutes, but I think he'll get enough to get a sense of how he is, how he's standing. The disappointing part for me is, like, we saw like how hard he worked this offseason to come in fit, come in shape, and I hope that he still kind of has that he didn't take too far a step back. It's impossible not to take any sort of step back when you obviously can't play basketball or can't really work out when you're in a boot and all that. But I'm hoping he's still kind of looking lean, looking in shape, and taking care of things. I was very excited by the version of James Harden we saw to start this year. So I hope that nothing's too impacted by that. But there's going to need to be some adjustments, even like looking at when he was playing his best to start the year, back-to-back 30-point games to start, a couple just impressive assist performances as we kind of come accustomed to. But there does still need to be some give and take in his game. And the biggest thing that I keep coming back to is he's improved on this, but I still need more of him just being comfortable as a spot-up shooter, as a catch-and-shoot guy, floor spacer, particularly if the Embiid and Harden dynamic is going to work. So I don't know. It's going to be one of those, like, it'll take him a little bit to shake some rust off, but I'm not worried. But there does need to be some growth in him and Embiid fully being connected, I guess, moving forward.
Yeah. And that's a great point as we look at Harden to return on Monday is we need as much time as possible for all these guys to play together before the playoffs, or we're going to end up in the same exact situation that we were in last season when you get Harden with 21 games left and you're trying to make everything work all in a jam. So we really, really need to get Tyrese Maxey back, get Harden back in here, and get the full rotation going, see what we really have here in the Sixers. Talking about Maxey, I know we talked about this before the show. Hopefully he's back within a couple weeks. When you look at the rest of this roster, though, and maybe it's not until Maxey gets back that you really look at this and think about what you're going to do. Because quite frankly, you need guys like Tobias. You need guys like Matisse Thybulle in case guys get into foul trouble. When you think about these guys, is there any place in your mind where you think they have like any type of value in the trade market? I know Tobias, give or take, he's looked good he's looked great at times this season. Then last night he has 3 points. I don't know if the Sixers would be better off to even move Tobias Harris, right? But Matisse Thybulle is kind of just sitting here rotting on our bench in a sense. He's really not getting much opportunity. So I don't know if that bodes well, as far as getting him. He's in a contract year. What are your thoughts regarding Matisse Thybulle, what you do with him? Do you just wait and see if you can get him in the game eventually? Or what do you think you do with Matisse?
Yeah, it's tough. They've definitely tried to trade him quite a bit over these past year and a half. There's been plenty of calls made about the Matisse and 23rd pick, which this eventually turned into Danny Green in the 23rd for DeAnthony Melton, which was a terrific trade. But there was plenty of calls made about the Matisse and 23rd pick trying to package with anything. The contract does make it difficult because obviously he's on an expiring. They couldn't reach an extension agreement, which I think is probably the right decision for both sides because he's such a niche player, more so than almost any player I've ever seen, as far as you're so good at this one thing, but so just not at anything else really. And to give Matisse his credit, there's been some signs of improvement. He had that left-handed layup the other day, which we haven't seen from him in quite some time. He shot a 3-pointer yesterday, probably the most confident I've seen him take one and made it. So I guess you can kind of squint through your lenses and see a little bit. But as far as like him being on an expiring, the only time you really see teams like make that sort of trade is like if they think it's a missing piece to what their team needs. And I just can't wrap my mind around like a playoff team thinking Matisse Thybulle is like the missing piece, just because like we've seen it not work in the playoff plenty of times already. I do think that like if the opportunity arises, if there's some sort of like Furkan and Matisse flip, that could work. I think if a Toby trade does materialize, and I do want to give Tobias his flowers. He's been terrific this year. Deserves a ton of credit for swallowing as much pride as he does, adapting to the role that the Sixers need, and like being more comfortable as a catch and shooter, taking more 3-pointers than he has in his entire Sixers career. He's done a ton to sacrifice for this team, but at the end of the day, he's not the ideal fit for what this Sixers team needs. And I think if there's a chance to flip him for a guy that is a better defender, a more athletic wing, a guy that is like excels as a spot up shooter versus Tobias is kind of doing it well and is fine at it, but not necessarily his game. So I think if an opportunity like that arises, but I'm not super confident that will be the case either. There will be some sort of movement for sure. They still have an open roster spot. They've been very careful about keeping some money available against the cap. So there's going to be at least a move that's made, but I don't know how much value I see with like any of these guys, unfortunately.
What would you be looking for as far as to add to this team? Like, what do you think is the missing product or missing piece to this Sixers team?
It's to me, it's like a clear like 3-and-D wing and like the style of, I don't want to say as good as Jaylen Brown, but like that style of player, whether it's like a Norman Powell style player, a Jeremy Grant style player, like that type of wing. There's a play that I think about a ton that I just see from watching like around the other NBA that the Sixers just like, and Tobias and the Sixers can't really run, is it's like that backdoor cut where you can either like lob it or give a drop pass and they go up and dunk. Like that kind of off-ball movement is something that would be so effective alongside Embiid, and like Tobias just doesn't have that kind of pop to be able to do that. And to have a guy and just as a defender, like Tobias, once again, deserves a ton of credit for improving in this area and getting better, but he's never going to be like a lockdown defensive guy. And he tries super hard. And specifically on the Sixers team, like they're always going to have to overcome Maxey and Harden being somewhat of defensive liabilities for their own individual reasons. So to have a guy that just excels defensively at the wing, I think would change the team's outlook a ton.
You're so spot on there, because you need one of those like cagey, lengthy, like you said, 3-and-D guys. Jeremy Grant, it's funny. He's really looking. I don't know that he looked like that in Detroit, and he was probably just in a really bad spot as far as their usage of him. He's being overused, I feel. But out in Portland, he looks like he would be perfect as far as what we need. You know what I mean? And I remember everybody turning their heads to a Jeremy Grant move in the offseason, but he's putting up great numbers. He's shooting the 3-ball really well out there. I really like what he's doing. But you're spot on. That's exactly what this team is missing. And then you talk about, you have PJ Tucker as well, right? So that PJ Tucker and Tobias fit is just really weird. How have you felt about the additions of PJ Tucker? Is he kind of just doing what you expected? Because I'm trying not to overreact. Like he's going to have 0-point nights, right? He's not a scorer. Right. But like, is he doing things that you expect, or you just think he coasts until the playoffs? Like, how do you feel about that? Are you disappointed in the production?
I'll go like slightly below expectations. I'm definitely not like freaking out in the way I know some people are. For the people that like expected like a huge impact in the box scores, that's never been PJ Tucker. Like he's never been a guy throwing up a ton of shots, scoring a bunch, filling everything up. He's always been like a do the little things, and the Sixers do need that. Like one of the things that interests me, and again, this was prior to last night's game, so this could have changed as well. But when you look at the best 2-man units on the Sixers team, Tucker's in the top 4 alongside Embiid, Shake Milton, Harden, and Maxey. So it's like, and some of that's obviously that's where he plays his minutes, and those guys are phenomenal. So it comes along, but it does speak to like the little things that he does, and the off-ball screens, creating for others, things like that. And more so than anyone on this Sixers roster, he does kind of like get the, I guess, leniency of like, if he shows up in the playoffs, like it's all worth it. Like if he's a guy that can knock down some big corner threes come postseason, like everyone's going to forget about all the scoreless games. And the Sixers are 5-1 in games which PJ Tucker have not scored, which is a hilarious stat and one I'm going to keep monitoring. But I don't know. I overall, like my issues with Tucker have more so coming back to like us not having any other wing defenders. Like our defensive strategy for the Sixers is kind of like if PJ Tucker can't guard him, we're just kind of screwed on that. So I don't know. I feel a little bad for how high of a role he's kind of being thrown into, but I'm not super worried in the long term.
Because if you had a legitimate 3 in D, then it would look a lot better beside PJ Tucker. I'm with you, man. That's why I'm trying to temper my expectations, or just kind of coast, I guess, until we get to the playoffs. I just don't want it to go too long here and we start losing games. But it obviously has a positive effect in some rate in them winning. So I'm excited. How excited are you for this Sixers team going into the latter half of the season? Obviously, we got about 3 quarters left. How excited are you for this Sixers team? Do you feel that they still can reach your expectations from what you thought before the season? Where are you at as far as your before season expectations?
I guess it's coming down to like, I need to see this Harden and Embiid relationship grow is my biggest thing I'm going to be like focused on moving forward, is like, because we can talk about all the pieces we've added, the coaching, bring up all these million other things. The bottom line, I really do think, is it comes down to is if Embiid and Harden are good enough come postseason time. Like if there's like they can figure out how to get on the same page, and they're too good not to, is kind of my thing. Like these guys are both so talented as basketball players that they just have to figure out a way to make this work that brings out the best in both of them for the sake of the Sixers. So I'm still bought in. I still think they have a chance, but I need to see a little bit of roster movement, come up with something that can improve kind of that wing area, that defensive thing. And just like see those two figure out how to play together is my biggest thing. So I won't say like I'm super panicked or super excited either way. I'm still a little bit like sit back and watch. It's going to take us more time than the average NBA team to figure out this Sixers team, just because of the injuries, the turnover, how we haven't really seen everything in a long stretch yet. So I think once these guys return from injury, we're going to have a clear idea of like what this team's identity is.
Yeah, I agree. And I think once again, bringing up the point of that some type of wing, athletic wing being added to the roster, because you think about playing a team like Boston, like two of the best wings in the NBA, and they're on the same team, and that just seems crazy to even go up against at this point. But like you said, we still got a long way to go as far as building chemistry and seeing what this final product is really going to look like. Where did you have the Sixers before the season? Did you have them Eastern Conference Finals, second round exit? Where do you have them?
I had them third in the conference, but behind the Bucks and Celtics, which I still kind of stand by. I don't know what I have as far as like a playoff outcome. Again, I think
it's hard to pick them to go past the second round, Sean. Like it is really hard to pick them to do that without seeing it.
Realistically, like looking at it right now, like I don't think they're better than either the Celtics or the Bucks, which kind of sucks to take that as a reality check. But I don't think they're like that far off that it's insurmountable. So maybe a couple changes, we figure everything out, and like there's something there, but they still have some work to do for sure.
Absolutely, man. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get you out of here, Sean. I appreciate you taking the time today to hop on Scotty Talks Sixers. Of course, we're going to have you on here again at some point throughout the season. Maybe we'll do the midway mark. Maybe we can just do like a quarterly check-in with Sean Barnard. But be sure to check out Sean Barnard. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, he is a Sixers staff writer for Heavy on Sports, an Eagles contributor for Yard Barker, and founder of Pick Swap Media at Pick Swap Media on Twitter and on YouTube, I believe as well, right? At Pick Swap Media. So be sure to go check out his channel, give him a subscribe, turn the notifications on just like you would do for DSM Media. But Sean, thank you once again for hopping on the show with me today, man.
Yeah, always good to talk it up. I appreciate you for having me, Scotty. And yeah, well, I would love to come back on whenever. So yeah, thank you, and looking forward to next time.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. Be sure to follow Sean at Sean_Barnard1. You can find me at Scotty Drown, and be sure to hit that subscribe button for DSM Media and give them a follow on all social media platforms. That's going to be it for this episode of Scotty Talks Sixers. I will see you on Saturday at 10 a.m. Peace, everybody.